Hello and welcome everyone. On behalf of the GSIF Creative Subcommittee, I welcome all the participants and panelists for today's workshop. Before we begin, I want to share a few ground rules with everyone in attendance today. That this workshop, the views and opinions shared in today's workshop are of the panelists themselves and not of the organization that they represent or they have worked for. In addition, any mention of a company is not an endorsement of that given company or the brand. And to ensure the workshop is welcoming for everyone, we want to briefly go over the code of conduct for the workshop. As you have been notified, this workshop is being recorded. So please keep your cameras and microphones turned off at all times. And failure to do so might result into non-participation in this event. So today's panel discussion has been organized by the GSA's Career Development Subcommittee, as you can see here, together with Jason, who is the co-chair of the committee. Rupinder, Janan, I'm co-hosting this event with Rupinder and Janan, who are also the members of the Career Dev Subcommittee. And however, every member that has been showcased here has been instrumental in making this workshop happen. And special thanks to Jessica and Bolin, who are the acting directors and the program coordinator of the GSA's Early Career Engagement Program. So before we begin our workshop and discussion today, I would like to share the information about today's attendees. As you can see from today's audience, we primarily have undergraduates, postgraduates, postdocs, and graduate students. And also we have regular GSA members, non-GSA members, and attendees from the industries. And as you can see, we have a worldwide participation in our today's workshop. We have over 200 participants from different parts of the world. And most of them are postdocs or graduate students, but we also have undergrads and faculty members from academia, non-industry, and other avenues. So let's begin today's workshop by allowing our panelists to briefly introduce themselves by telling us their current position, a brief summary of what their current position entails, and their professional journey so far. So I would like to call upon Dr. Prasun Mishra to begin with. Dr. Prasun.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Abhinav, for this opportunity, and applaud the GSA's initiative to bring us all together. And so hi, this is Prasun Mishra. I am founder and CEO of American Association for Precision Medicine, a nonprofit organization bringing the field of precision medicine stakeholders together actually to accelerate the field of precision medicine and transform patient health. I am a biotechnologist and pharmacologist by training, received my PhD at Rutgers University, where I had a very affluent academic career for almost 7 years. And then from there, I moved to US government, where I served at Department of Health and Human Services, NCI, NIH, actually, there for another 7 years, actually. And from government, I transitioned to industry, where I moved to Genentech Roche, where I led some of their oncology drug discovery and development projects. Also led some of the high throughput biology and high throughput screening initiatives as well. Actually, so robotic AI technology. These are all topics that are near and dear to my heart. And from Genentech, I started, American Association for Precision Medicine, saw a void in the community, that there was no nonprofit initiative that was helping. So, and on the entrepreneur side, I have co-founded Agility Pharmaceuticals, which is a technology-driven drug discovery company. During COVID times, we co-founded Precision Biopharma, which is an antiviral drug discovery company, bringing some of the promising molecules actually to clinic. And I also chair WISE, which is World Investors and Entrepreneurs Society. It is a collective of ultra high net worth individuals. We are organized around impact investing, actually. And also we have also co-founded an accelerator in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. It is called M7 Accelerator, actually. So those who are in the Bay Area, I invite you to come and visit our accelerator, and all entrepreneurs invited. So thank you. Look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra. That was a really a spectrum of career choices that you have been through, and we would like to know more about that. But I would like to now call upon Dr. Seema to introduce herself. Dr. Seema.
Hi, I'm Seema Sheoran. I'm a senior associate in equity research at Evercore. In simple terms, what I do is I evaluate biotech stocks and make recommendations to investors. Before this, I was doing my PhD in neuroscience at University of Illinois. And then right after that, I joined equity research. And I'm happy to be here and answer all your questions.
Thank you, Seema, and we'll get back to know more about the equity research and how did you transition into this position. And before that, I would like to call upon Dr. Hassan Naqvi to introduce himself. Dr. Naqvi, please.
Thank you so much, Abhinava. So hi, everybody. My name is Hassan Naqvi. I am an immunologist by background. I got my graduate degree at the University of Texas at Austin. And right out of grad school, I kind of fell into digital health and into entrepreneurship in my postdoc. So I did a lot of fluorescent microscopy and imaging. And the imaging part of kind of my expertise that led me to working with a group that ultimately kind of did a spin-out company, and we can certainly talk more about that as the discussion goes along. And that set the way for kind of my focus on commercialization and digital health transformation. So I've been doing that for about the past 15 or 16 years, mostly in academic medical centers. So I got my start after my startup company at the Cleveland Clinic, moved on to Vanderbilt, and finally ended up at Johns Hopkins University before moving over into industry at AstraZeneca into my current role, where I focus on partnering with the healthcare ecosystem around digital health data and precision diagnostics as well. So we are a pharmaceutical company. We're not a software company, but where we can leverage those aspects to kind of impact the patient outcome and the healthcare ecosystem overall is by building intentional partnerships with different players, providers, payers, technology companies, as well as with the policymakers and health authorities to help drive the adaptation and the evolution of the healthcare ecosystem. So very happy to be part of this excellent panel here today.
Thank you, Dr. Hassan. And that's really very, a lot of attendees today have been very curious to know as to how did you switch from your basic research petitions to the digital health and what digital health really entails. And we would like to know more about that as the discussion goes. But before that, I would like to invite Seema to please go over your career trajectory in a little more detail. Like, how did you prepare yourself for this petition that you did? When in your PhD or a postdoc did you decide that this is the career for you? And if you could just discuss with our attendees today what your career journey has been so far.
Yeah, sure. So first, I think during my PhD, like maybe 3-4 years in, I realized that I don't want to, continue going into postdoc. So I knew that I want to venture out and explore other fields where I can still use my scientific expertise. And then I was looking at, life sciences consulting and many other fields. So I think knowing from the beginning or in the middle, what I don't like, it was easier to, figure out what other areas I can go into. So based on that, I thought of going into business development, and I was looking for internships, and it just happened by talking to people. I did an internship at a fund in Chicago, which is pretty rare. And it just happened that person was also doing a postdoc. And when he joined Capital Fund, he thought that PhD can really learn a lot from such internship. They can apply their scientific knowledge in evaluating stocks and being in the finance field. So that internship was really helpful for me. I learned to especially for the interviews, I learned how to say, science in terms of if I'm pitching a stock. So that really helped me during my interviews. And I just realized after that, so many, if you look at job postings, especially in doc jobs. Like there are so many equity research positions there. And I think with my internship, it just like sort of differentiated me from, other PhDs who didn't have the experience. And obviously, as I said, my internship experience helped me in answering those questions and show that I'm really interested in the field. I think that's one thing everybody wants to know from a PhD or a postdoc, like why this field. Because we are definitely venturing out into like, different fields. So they really want to know, like, why do you want to do this? So yeah, so that was my journey.
That's really interesting. But you mentioned about the internship that you have done. How did it would come to you that you also, when like for example, the grad students or the postdocs, they think about these kind of non-conventional careers. They think about doing MBAs or any marketing kind of diploma or something like that. Did it ever come to you that you need those kind of diplomas? This especially for the grad students or the postdocs who would like to go to these careers, but they're thinking that they would need some kind of like business specialization. Would you like to discuss that a little more in detail?
Yeah, so in terms of requirements, it depends. Like when you join this field, you're going to work with different teams, like there's going to be one managing director who has like covers like multiple stocks, then you cover like, some of those stocks. So depends like if on their, team, they already have some like with banking experience and they are very good at like modeling and they need somebody who's really good at science and they teach you finance along the way. So that was me. That I had no finance experience and there were interviews where like they would ask you finance questions and I was pretty, like open about it. Like I have no finance experience. So then like if they're looking for somebody like that, I'm not the person. But there were many who were looking for somebody with just science background and who are interested in the field by showing that they have done something related to it. And they were just ready to, teach me finance along the way. So yeah, but I would say that having some knowledge of finance, because I feel like in my case, internship helped. But it's good to, take a look at like balance sheet, cash flow, those statements. And so just basic, like even reading Investopedia articles, they have like a lot of articles regarding that so that you get some sense and invest in some biotech stocks. You can just use like Robinhood or whatever, and just like learn like why that you are interested in investments. And also like there's always going to be a question about like, okay, pitch me a stock, they want to know. So and especially when you are like, it doesn't need to be that much finance heavy. You just need to know, like maybe you like a technology very much, from some company. So you just need to like explain it in simple terms why you like it and like, 3 bullet points. So yeah, it's mostly about like learning how to like translate your knowledge into like other people who don't really may not have the same background and not much time also. So 3 bullets, and they'll ask you more questions if they find it interesting.
All right. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. And I'm sure a lot of us would like to know that, and that answer helped. Now, from a senior's perspective, I would like to ask you, Dr. Prasun, that about the marketing and finance and investment regarding like how early career scientists would see these kind of fields, like especially from your journey that you have been to a PhD program, postdoc program, moving to an industry. How would a early career scientist would like to prepare for these kind of careers, especially if they are in a PhD program or a postdoc program?
So I was saying that, we all have a different interest, right? So there are a couple of things on the table here. One is the industry careers, right? Actually, and the second is, finance careers, actually. So I think the traditional, academic career, if that's what you are, cut out for, actually, it's a that is also very rewarding, field actually, and then you should continue doing that. And I have enjoyed, majority of my career doing that actually. But depends on, if you are interested in industry careers actually, then from the beginning I will advise to, focus your research interest towards sort of a translational research actually, and or basic research where you become a master of a certain area that industry is looking for actually, and then you join that particular department in that industry, or also network with the leaders in your field actually, in the industry actually, and then try to and if you are a leader, it's a no-brainer to hire you actually. So that'll be my advice actually, if you are looking for an industry career actually. And also sometimes even if you don't have your area is not a focus, but the techniques that you learn, that's a blessing. And overall, if you have a drive to make a difference actually, you would have no one stopping you actually. And also try out the postdocs in industry actually. That's another good option actually, to test the waters and see if you like the culture actually. If you like then I think the transition becomes much easier actually into the same company that you are in, or a different company. In finance, there's a lot of opportunities, like what Seema described actually, and as well as on funds actually. On the fund side, you will have on the fund side, you can join as an associate actually, where you will be evaluating a deal as well as trying to make a decision on the investment side actually, and eventually you can progress to on that path to become one of the senior associates, as well as at the end you can become a partners, where you will be part of a fund. So yeah, these are all fun journeys, but you have to make up your mind. It's your decision. So that's what I tell everybody. It's your decision actually, but the paths are, this is the point when you are all on the different forks. Once you choose a fork actually, and then continue whatever your calling is, continue on that path, and then I think you will find a way. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was really enriching and helpful to a lot of us. And now the two things that I took from your answer just here is networking and specialization technique, if we are a basic researcher or a translational. And that's a great segue to the next question to Dr. Naqvi. You mentioned that you had mastered this technique of the fluorescent microscopy or imaging that helped you to get the situation that you get. So would you like to describe in a little more detail how did you approach to your employer, or what actually helped to get to your position that you are currently?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting story, because I kind of fell out of academia, as it were, by happenstance. So I was, I was kind of on my pathway of getting the postdoc to get the next postdoc to get to a faculty, like that kind of thing, get my K-21 grants and so on and so forth, bring money along with me so that, get myself into a nice state school and all of that. And so because we were doing imaging and fluorescent imaging and just to, set the context of how this all happened. So my advisor comes from the Roger Chen family tree. So Roger Chen won the Nobel Prize in 2009, and my advisor was a postdoc in Roger Chen's lab. And so the idea was that I would end up in Roger Chen's lab, and so he was on, we kind of had him talk about fluorescence and fluorescence microscopy and all that. And so there's, like that kind of name brand cachet and everything that goes along with that. And so we had folks in our mechanical engineering department who came over, and they were like, you handle a microscope, so can you have a look at algae for us, because we're doing a biofuels project. And I'm an immunologist, right? So I was like, well, I'm used to looking at immune cells, but not really used to kind of algae, but I can help you light them up fluorescently, whatever you want to light up in those cells, and kind of do imaging. And one thing led to another, and I got involved in that project. And biofuels, as you know, is kind of an arena of interest, especially in a energy-focused state like Texas. And so we had VCs and we had investors who were interested in looking for a technology, and they said that what you should do is do a little bit of a startup on this. And so that is kind of what happened. Is we started focusing on validating the technology, making it investor grade. So what that means is, you take it out of research and kind of think about what it's going to look like in real life. And that was really my introduction to the universe of commercialization and this other side of things. And what I picked up in that process was, and I didn't kind of consciously know this at the time, but it was really what was happening in that environment was I was starting with the strengths that I had, which is what we all have kind of in this audience. So the strengths that we have science, research, logic, problem solving, right? Those are the things that we have. And so really that's kind of what you start with, and think about kind of retuning them to a problem to a problem from a slightly different lens. So like what all of us are doing is we're looking at the mysteries of nature and biology, life sciences, physics, what have you, and trying to uncoil, untangle them and come up with solutions. Now you're kind of, from a commercialization perspective, you're just taking that a little bit differently and saying, okay, I'm going to use my analytical experience and capabilities to answer the question, is anybody going to pay for this? Is there a use for this in the market out there, right? And thinking about that. And as you kind of start focusing towards that, you're going to pick up the language, you're going to pick up kind of the skill sets to do that, you're going to pick up the connections. And that is precisely what happened in my kind of in my journey, was because I was involved with the entrepreneurial side of this, I got tied into the tech transfer office at my university where I was doing a postdoc, and I didn't even know that there was such a thing as a tech transfer office, right? And so now you kind of get introduced to that concept and that possibility, and start working down that line. And ultimately, I ended up with my first kind of job away from the bench, which was at the Cleveland Clinic, at Cleveland Clinic Innovations, which is a tech transfer office for the Cleveland Clinic, and that is kind of the that was the springboard for the next 10, 12 years. Based off of that commercialization, that of course kind of built me up to a place where I could hop over into industry and turn that around. So from instead of from kind of a commercialization of research assets, turn that around to becoming a buyer of some of those assets, right? And thinking about it from that perspective. So it's just kind of building on what you have and building on the skill sets that you have onto kind of the next skill set and getting over there. So that's kind of my journey in a nutshell. But of course, I'm happy to go into details as well.
That's really a great story that you've shared, and I can resonate. Basically, like I have worked all my life on these humble fruit flies, the Drosophila, and a lot of grad students and postdoc here would know that. And then suddenly we jumped into a discovery that we felt like would be a very clinical relevance, will have a clinical relevance. We approached certain companies and they were all of a sudden very interested. We already did some experiments in the patient samples, and they were able to, they asked us to do a little more experiments. They provided us funding, and we got a patent and licensing. And that's how I got into this tech transfer thing. I also did not know entire career like what a tech transfer office is, but now I know it. So would you like to expand a little more on these digital health technologies and what your job profile looks like in a day-to-day manner for our early?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we saw from COVID, for example, so access to clinics, for example, shut down because people didn't know how to handle patients coming in, right? What it was that we were dealing with and how infectious it was and kind of what was happening. So a lot of healthcare and especially with COVID care, but with healthcare overall, that switched over to remote. And that's kind of that's not the start of digital health, but that kind of frames what digital health is, right? So there's a telemedicine piece. You pick up the phone, or you pick up your smart device and have a video conversation with your physician, and tell them what are the symptoms that you're experiencing. Now you add on another layer to that, right? Your wearable, your watch or something like that, that reports out your blood pressure and your heartbeat and so on and so forth. And the physician can see that on their dashboard, and they can say, oh, I can see from your symptoms as well as from kind of these indicators that are coming in, your ECG, your pulse rate, your blood pressure, et cetera, that you might be kind of, you might be experiencing XYZ kind of a disease or something like that. So based on that, we can either lay out a therapy for you here remotely, or you can come in for a visit because we need to do a blood draw or we need to do something else. So that is kind of what digital health is. It is delivering care to the patients where they are. and also making it more precise, making it more involved. So instead of a patient waiting to go to a physician's office and the physician and their staff doing a certain number of tests and kind of gaining a picture of that patient in that one moment in time, you have the patient sitting at their home or going about their lives where they are. There is biomarkers and digital markers that are being picked up by their wearables, or they have a survey that shows up on their phone. How are you feeling today? Do you have pain today? Are you experiencing fever? Do you have a cough? They kind of go through that validated questionnaire that provides information. And then targeting, instead of having a picture of the patient one moment in time, you have a continuous picture. And now that you have a continuous picture and you're generating all of this data, that data can then be used to analyze where the patient is headed and what their trajectory is. So and we can actually see use cases for this with the Apple Watch, for example, and the single lead EKG that they have, which is not, it's still has some ways to go before it is universally kind of adapted, but still for patients who are heart failure patients, they can have their watch kind of ping them that, there's something out of sorts about your heart rhythm. So you might want to call up your physician, or your Apple Watch directly kind of goes and alerts the care team. So there's this kind of continuous picture that comes through, which can almost predict where the patient is headed. And so timely interdictions and treatments can be brought to the fore, and that of course improves outcome. So from our perspective, and from the perspective of healthcare overall, I don't know if you've seen the figures, the cost of discovering newer medications keeps on going up, and the efficacy and the efficacious return of that, we are kind of at that inflection point, or getting close to that inflection point, right, where there's only so much that a chemical drug and an ingestible is going to do. So what is how do we kind of derive the benefits out of that? Well, part of it is making sure that we are monitoring patients so that we can, not we as in the companies, but the healthcare ecosystem can understand what's going to happen with them, or what they're at risk of before something happens, so that we can provide them with the timely treatment that gives them better outcomes, but also ensure that they're adherent to their care pathway. So imagine a chronic disease patient, right? So let's set aside fevers and kind of coughs and colds on the side, but let's think about a patient who is schizophrenic, for example, or is going through depression. Number one, that is kind of a long-term issue that they have to stay with, and they have to take medications consistently. So they need a reminder for that medication. Chances are they're not taking just one medication, but they're taking several medications, and they have to be taken in a certain order. They like a reminder or help with kind of which pills to take and when to take them. So I don't know how many of you have taken care of or do take care of family members. I took care of my grandmother when in kind of the end of her life, and she was on about 9 different medications, and the way that she used to tell them apart was by their colors and shapes, and all of them were in one single bottle, right? So because nobody wants to open up 9 different bottles, and so there was no way, it was hit or miss. And so if we can, and probably like she died of old age, but she probably died because part of the reason was that she wasn't taking all of her medications in the right order. So it's kind of, digital health really leads into all of these different aspects of the patient's treatment, and not just the treatment, but overall wellness as well. So a patient who is deals with chronic depression or cancer or heart disease, for all of them, exercise, diet, wellness play just as important a role in determining their outcomes as does the medication. So these are all kind of very important parts, and digital is a way to stage them and coordinate them all for those patients, such that they can get kind of maximal benefit out of their treatment and get a better experience. So that's kind of that's what I think about, and it's a lot of fun to think about that, right? Sitting in my perch and thinking about, okay, we're not a software company, we're a pharmaceutical company, but what can we do to improve the patient outcome and the patient experience? What can we do to help contribute to the healthcare ecosystem such that those outcomes and those experiences improve. So that, I think, was one part of the question. I apologize, I forgot the other part of the question. Was it how did I get there, or was it something else?
Well, yeah, we'll come back to that later. But thank you. That was so insightful.
Okay.
And these are especially, like, all of us had experienced this in the time of COVID, especially all these digital health technologies, and especially with the advent of AI, and ChatGPT and whatnot. This is going to be the future, and it's very near to Dr. Mishra's heart. So we'll come back to him and ask these questions later to him. But before that, I would like to ask Seema, like, how is your day-to-day job looks like, and what do you love, what do you dislike about your job, and how do you deal with your day-to-day job profile?
Sure. So because I cover stocks, so it's around stock market. And what happens is that, before stock market opens around 9:30, like, all the news flow happens before that. So I'm generally up by 6 a.m. and then looking at the news flow, and then what's happening. If there's sometimes there's phase 3 trial results happening, or somebody discontinued their program. So all those sort of news happens. So that decides my, day. So I really don't know a day before, how my next day is going to be. So based on that, if we cover a specific number of companies, if there's any news pertaining to those companies, even in the competitive space, we write a note. Based on that, if we need to change our model, we change the model, and we publish these notes, which go to investors, for them to know, how to interpret, or what analysts are thinking about this data set or this company based on the news. So after that, during the day, then I just work on, there are many other projects, we do deep dives on some research area or some company, and try to understand which are the companies which are doing really good or can be really good. And again, around 4 p.m., same thing, news flow starts, and we again look at the news and see how if there's anything that we need to let investors know, depending on our coverage. So as you can see, I think the part I don't like, which is part of this business, is I do not know how my day is going to be. I can have, and that's why I don't even have any, much of dinners during weekdays or anything. It's just because I do not know, I might have to cancel it last minute. So days are generally very hectic. You get up pretty early, and then you do work till 7 p.m. normal day. So that's the part. And the thing that I really like is obviously that I'm able to keep my expertise of because you read a lot of papers, it just depending on whatever the company and their research focus is and drugs. So I like that part of being able to use those, but also on the side, learning about new techniques, new fields, because I did it in neuroscience, but I'm reading about so many other diseases that, to be honest, I didn't even know that exist. And learning about finance alongside. So it's a very fast pace. So, you move on really fast and you keep learning. So there's a steep learning curve, and you learn a lot about biotech space or pharma space in general. And we do talk to companies, and we do talk to investors. So that's also we get to learn from companies a lot, because also we ask them a lot of questions about their programs. So it's good to connect with them also, and being able to talk to investors, how they are thinking of the stock, what questions they have. So coming from PhD, you are move into this field where you are exposed to so much knowledge that which is helpful in many ways.
Of course, one thing that I found was common, that's totally not what we researchers do, but one thing that was common is uncertainty. We also don't know how our experiments will turn on that particular day, and the next day, what experiments are we going to plan? But some of us would really like to enjoy doing that. So my next question will now be to Dr. Mishra. Dr. Mishra, does your job profile offer you to talk to academia, have these kind of industry-academia collaborations and partnerships? And what do you think the chances for the early career scientists are in there?
Yeah, I think we have, on the industry side, that's how the system is designed, right? Academia does, gets grants and does, some of the exciting pioneering work in them, and then we come in and we basically license it out, those technologies, and then we work with academia on the collaboration agreement where they do some of the follow-on works with us because they're the best pioneers and thought leaders in their field actually, and then in doing so we have this amazing interaction with the thought leaders as well as the postdocs, students that are leading that initiative, and sometimes that's very, very helpful not only to students but for us as an industry as well, because these are some of the leaders that will come out and then will be looking to lead those projects on the industry side, and sometimes they come on board from academia to the government side, and overall this empowers students very, very well working on the academic and industry projects. And that's what I did. I think I was working while in Rutgers. Since I did a translational research, I worked directly in collaboration with the pharmaceutical company, also at NIH. So that way, I think you almost have one leg in the pharmaceutical industry actually, and that goes under your belt. So yeah, so these are some thoughts. And then for postdocs, and so once we establish a collaboration research agreement, then there's an opportunity for for postdocs and students to or faculty to be hired, and on that particular project. So opportunities arise. Hope that answered your question, Abhinav.
Yes, of course. Thank you. And on the same note, I would like to ask you, would you like to share one or two incidences from your career journeys that you think were milestones for your career journey so far?
Yeah, I think that's the I think for me, these are some personal experiences. So I started off as a so I come from a physician family. So I was brought by my family saying that, Prasun, we live to help others live longer, right? So that was the thread of our being, that we live to help others live longer. So I made my basic mantra that basically I will save as many lives as possible before I surrender mine, right? Actually, so then that's my kind of a promise to myself. And then what happens is that once you have a mission, the world starts aligning itself to about according to your mission. And then the HIV pandemic I jumped on. Actually, that's on. I thought HIV was one of the biggest life threats to humanity around that time. So I jumped in, did some drug discovery, development work, trying to develop an anti-HIV drugs actually. And then when HIV was under control, hopped on to cancer, because cancer was still the biggest killer actually. And then tried to and learn during the time. I learned a lot of lessons, and eventually one of my elder sisters actually got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer actually, and I was that time working on pancreatic cancer and trying to study why the cancer is so resistant. No drug enters. It's a basically very solid tumor. So I still remember when she called me thinking that I will have some magic cure for her, but eventually we were unable to save her. We tried everything, but that's when I think it was a pivotal moment from that. And the others, I lost some of my mentors actually, who were oncologists actually, who were known to cure cancer. They died some sort of a rare diseases, rare cancer types actually, and both at Rutgers and NIH. And I was like, that was kind of a devastating. So I really realized that all these beautiful pictures that we present in journals and mouse models and all that, actually I think it's all is fine, but it just unless somebody in your family gets diagnosed with cancer, then you realize what is the reality that's happening in the hospitals right now. And we all as a community have a responsibility to change that. So that's when I think now at American Association for Precision Medicine, we are not only creating a precision medicine, which is a reactive healthcare, but also precision health. So how do we leverage data to build, and digital health to keep sort of a behavioral app kind of based prescriptions to keep people healthy. So they don't get there, because once you have a chronic disease, it's already too late. Actually, sometimes it's very rare to reverse it. Actually, so that's what I think one of my pivotal moments, and it's just not my journey. I think a lot of them on their audience have shared similar journeys. So I think I feel like I'm part of your pain and humble learning, and then we all together make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing those personal incidents, Dr. Mishra, and I'm sure those have led you to take the leadership challenge that you have taken and started the companies that you have started. So moving on to the same territory and asking the questions to you, Dr. Naqvi, how do you see the industry-academia partnership in your space, and how do the early career scientists prepare for any such opportunity that is there?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think that it's academic research is the basis, right? Nonprofit research, academic grant-based kind of research is the basis for most of the science that we know today. I mean, that there is obviously research and development that happens in industry as well, but kind of it's all cushioned upon and built upon the groundwork that happens within academia. And I think that the academic research or the nonprofit research sector, for that matter, is a great jumping off point for kind of researching, for pursuing alternative careers. So we talked about the tech transfer office as one aspect, right, which is tied into kind of the licensing and the intellectual property aspects of different technologies. That is certainly a big part of what comes out and what is the output of the research enterprise, as it were, but it's not the only thing. There's also usually within the same office or closely adjacent to that is the Office of Sponsored Research. And sometimes that Office of Sponsored Research also does corporate development or corporate sponsored research contracts as well. And that is another flavor of getting involved with industry and kind of looking at an alternative kind of career for PhDs. And certainly there are different kind of differentiating skills that come out of that. So Abhinava, you had mentioned that you had been in a tech transfer office. And so I think one of the first things beyond kind of the tech transfer aspect that becomes pretty evident to PhDs and to researchers is a potential career in the legal field, right? Law firms, because a lot of IP attorneys, actually all of them, if not most of them, have to have a technical background to really understand what it is that they're writing a patent application on. And so law firms usually depend on what they call technical advisors, which are essentially grad students or postdocs, providing their technical expertise on different technologies and kind of patent applications that are being built up, and to actually write parts of those patent applications that deal with the technical description of what the invention is and where they're going. So that's one aspect of it. So the adjacent to that is the sponsored research piece, which I think really develops skills around alliance management, around business development, around kind of negotiations to a certain extent, and managing the logistics involved in setting up a research project and doing that. Staying within kind of the same environment, we also have a new ventures function or an accelerator function. A lot of universities do have accelerators or incubators, if you will, for startup companies. And that kind of is a great way to, I think, bridge over to the different flavors of investors. I think both Drs. Mishra and Dr. Sheoran had kind of pointed to venture capitalists and to the investor field overall. So, they kind of ladder out, or they kind of differentiate out between angel investors or foundational investors versus late stage VCs, venture capitalists, as well as kind of going to the end stage of people who do mergers and acquisitions or M&A functions and kind of all of that. So within all of these things, the thread that unites them all is the technical and scientific diligence, right? The details of, is this technology real? Is it going to work? And that is the strength, of course, that all of us in this audience and in this meeting tend to have. And that is something that we can capitalize on. And then, build skills alongside them, whether that is negotiations, whether that's building up skills in legal, whether that's on the kind of financial side, or on the negotiation or transactional side of things. Those are things that will come along as we kind of experience that. But it's like, hopefully the point that's coming across is, and what everybody's going to see is that all of those paths come from or originate from, you can actually argue that they originate from academia and from an academic institution in one way or another. I think one of the things that we as a whole can do a better job of is highlighting those a little bit more, both the universities, institutions, as well as those of us who are away from the benches, to kind of point these things out for you all who are in the audience. But if you look around in your institutions and kind of ask around, I am pretty sure that you'll come across a tech transfer office or a sponsored research office, or an incubator, or even if not an incubator, a student entrepreneurship program. And those are great programs to get into the ecosystem. One of the things, we are all scientists, and one of the things I really kind of enjoy talking about this is we tend to focus on skills, right? What is it that we can do and what is it that we can deliver? And that is a great place to start off on. That's the core of what you have. But just as important, I think, is getting into those ecosystems and having those conversations with the stakeholders there. So if you want to go into the investment side, talk to the investors, talk to the VCs. Not only will that tell you what these guys are thinking about, but it will also expose you to the language that they're speaking as well, right? And picking up that language, speaking to them in their terminology is also an important part of getting more and more involved in that world as well.
Thank you for elaborating on that. And one thing I could pick up is, like you mentioned about the law firm. And I remember when I was writing my patent application, I was writing with a law firm where a lot of early career scientists were involved in designing the patent framework and everything. So one thing that I could take from your discussion right now is networking and upskilling. If you're doing some basic science, basic research, try to upskill yourself, try to network and meet as many people as you can, and try to see some translational aspect in your research. And that would probably lead you a long way. So moving on to the same kind of question territory, and asking this question to you, Seema. How much scope do you think is there in your area of work? For example, like, how do you see your field different, your research or the area or working different from the academic research? And do you think there is scope for any research in there? What kind of academic research do you miss in your field?
Yeah, so in terms of research, not really. We don't do much of, academic research, or we don't really talk to, academic folks as much. We do talk to a lot of doctors, when we have like a drug coming and like clinical trials as key opinion leaders. And also like I work in like public markets, so like the stocks that are public. So, so mostly it's the companies that we talk to and their researchers. Yeah, so in that sense, there's not much interaction with academia.
Well, yeah, still at least there is this networking opportunities with the academic leader and the investors and the other.
Oh yeah, in terms of that scope, it's like amazing field. Like I'm very happy because the opportunities are immense, because you're talking to companies, you get to know the, who are the like CEOs, you're speaking directly to them, you get to know the culture of that company. So, and you can also transition into those companies, BD, and other fields, depending on like if you like the firm or like, if your expertise like meet what the company is doing. And you also get to learn like how to evaluate companies even when like you're looking for your next job, because most of the times what happens is like, especially in biotech companies, you do want to do a lot of like bring drugs to market, you do want to do a lot of clinical trials, but you don't have money, right? So then like one thing when we are looking at these cash flow statements, you get to know like how much they are burning cash every quarter and how much cash they have. So you can sort of like understand from there, like how much cash runway do they have, and is their data coming? Do they have enough money to even get to that? And like, are they going to cut any other program because they don't have enough money? And like, are investors excited enough to give them money? So it just like, those are the things that you learn to evaluate about companies if you are thinking of, joining one, or like, even like if you join the company and that sort of role you're working in. And the other side is talking to investors, and like, then you go into like buy side, where you are the one who is investing into stocks. So there are those opportunities as well. So yeah, in terms of like, I guess, being in this field, you bring your expertise and then you learn finance. I feel like with PhD, if you add on any other skill outside of it, science, it's just like sort of a gold mine. So you just need to find that other skill, and add to your career.
We see a lot of interest in the attendees about the investment and equity career. Seema, there's one question to you from one of the attendees asking you, what do you see as an opportunity or challenge for the international students moving to equity research? Would you like to answer that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something like I myself like faced it being international student, especially PhDs. I think there are two different issues with like postdocs and PhDs, because as a PhD you get like 3 years of OPT, so you don't really need like H1B right away. But there were so many companies that I was trying to explain that, and they just couldn't understand the whole OPT part. And then like, because you need H1B visa sponsorship, especially I needed it. So like, then only bigger firms can sponsor it. Now smaller firms are not doing it. So then like your pool becomes smaller and smaller. So that's always a hurdle being an international. So I think one thing that I realized it later, but I think people should focus early on, even in their PhD or their postdoc, like understand your visa restrictions. It's not just about, like when you think you can move or like what you want to do, but knowing that in terms of like visa situation, when you can actually join something. Because when I was applying, especially like in this field, like they want you to like join as soon as possible. So if you tell me like I can't join for 3 other months, it's going to go to the second candidate. So it's just like understanding those things is important. And even when like I thought that, like my other fellow classmates were like, okay, I got a job. I'm going to go and tell my PhD supervisor that I got a job, need to write a thesis, and I'm out. I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. So I got the job. And then I realized that I need, OPT and like whatever, it takes like 3 months or something. So then I couldn't join at that time. But that was a great lesson for me to learn. And I went and told my PhD supervisor that, hey, like I'm international, this is my, so I need to have a defined date, for me to graduate. So we really need to like focus on that date, and like, because I want to, start my OPT according to that, because you have to start it like 2 or 3 months in advance. So yeah, so I think before, you have to start planning like a year or 2 years in advance.
Yes, of course. Thank you for answering that question. And I'm sure a lot of international grad students or postdocs would find that really helpful. So moving on to, we have a few minutes left, as I can see in our time schedule. I would like to move on to and bring this discussion back to the digital health and AI and ML technologies, and how early career scientists could find that helpful and prepare themselves for what is coming ahead. So I would like to ask this question to you, Dr. Prasun. With the advent of the AI and the ML and other such technologies, where do you see the basic life science research going in the next 5 or 10 years? And how do you think the early career scientists should prepare themselves for these changes that are coming?
Yeah, so I think it's a very good question, and I think the technology is technology is a thread of everything that we do right now, actually. So I think in research and development, I have been a great proponent of basically high throughput biology. So we are not limited to a few sets of experiments, publishing a paper that that actually may or may not get reproduced later on. So what high throughput biology does is that you do the same experiments thousands and thousands of times, and that's majority of the drug companies are utilizing it before moving their compounds to the late stage research actually. So it's and automated data analytics engines, and so there will be a lot of tools, and there are a lot of tools that are available to us. So how as a scientist we train in those tools and utilize those tools for our benefits. I just give you one example. I am a pharmacologist, so I used to run a lot of my plates where you add drugs and try to make the curves, the drug dose response curves, and then I became very proud of how reproducible those hundreds of curves I can make, and I trained my students, and they also became very proud to do that. But at one point in my career, I realized that these things can be done by robots actually. So we automated everything at NCI. We run a lot of automated screens at Genentech. We had starting from cell culture that was automated, done by robots to the high throughput screen. And at one point we did a lot of robotics work that I was even called a nickname, a guy with the robotic arms, because we already had a lot of robotic arms. That's how we worked. So as you see now, the need for routine work is ending, and now need for the specialized, higher intellectual data analytics and more scientific skills that AI, I think will need a very long time to learn actually. So I think what I like is the quote about from Stanford actually. They said that there was a big debate about radiology. The AI can interpret radiology reports at par with radiologists. So radiologists. There was a spur that they will be replaced by AI, but the Stanford commented that radiologists who will not learn AI will be replaced by radiologists who will do. So that's what I will leave you, postdocs and students. You all have to consciously make even if it's not part of your research, try to do some training on the side to make yourself savvy and a great data analytics scientist, because that's where we are all heading. I hope that answered your question, everyone.
Thank you. I was getting networking are the answers, I think. And since we have a few more minutes left, I would again roll the dice to Dr. Naqvi to comment about the AI and ML technologies in digital health space. How do you think that the early career scientists should prepare for this? And then we'll come back to Seema.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So one of the things I think, the opportunity that you have in your research is as a postdoc, as a graduate student, is to really kind of define a problem and then explore it from a number of different angles, right? You can, whether that is within the scope of the grant that you're working in, for example, and if it is out of scope of that, you can write for a grant to get a grant to kind of fund that, or at least you'll work with your PI. And so what really helps is having an expansive kind of mindset and imagination, right? So you're bringing your imagination, you're bringing your thinking about your particular protein. I'm an immunologist by background, so I'm just going to focus on that, right? Like, what does this protein do, and what is the structure of this? And so going beyond that to thinking about how can I bring in AI modeling, crystal structure prediction, those kind of things into this research, and start applying that research to get comfortable with that environment and with using those tools that are at your disposal, right? So the first thing would be to look at what cores does your university or your research facility have. They probably have an imaging core, they have a proteomics core, they have a genomics core. If they have a small molecule facility or a mass spectrometry center of excellence or something like that, they probably have a high throughput core as well, with a couple of robotic arms, associated with that. And to the extent that you can dial that into your research and kind of add that as an additional lens, or replace that for an existing kind of approach that you might have to get that exposure, I think that's going to be really, really useful. So that's one aspect of the preparation. The other aspect of this, just from personal experience, one of the things that I realized about myself, and I'd love to know from from people over here, whether on the panel or kind of the audience, please put this in the chat. I did not know as a graduate student on how to represent my skills in a CV or in a resume, right? Like I could talk about publications that I did, and I could talk about techniques that I could call out, but I could not verbalize for myself my managerial skills, right? Lab management, kind of if you're TAing, managing students or running a lab for them, or all of these things are giving you skills. And I did not have the skill set to actually put that on paper. So my CV used to be this extremely boring thing about the degrees that I had and the different kinds of techniques that I could run and the publications I had, and that was it. It didn't tell anybody anything about who I was as a person, kind of what I could focus on and those kind of things. And what really unlocked that for me was I spoke to a couple of colleagues after I started working in a tech transfer office. I started talking to business school grads, and they told me about how they do their resumes and kind of how they bring their, and that was really eye-opening for me. So my, like, one thing is maybe I'm the only one who kind of went through this, and people already have those skills, and like, I'd love to know everybody's like what everybody else's experiences have been, and if their experiences are the same as mine, the advice that I would give them is make a friend in the business school, right? Or if you already have friends in business school, reach out to them and ask them about how they tailor their resumes, because that is a very important skill to have. The experiences in artificial intelligence and digital are absolutely important to have, but representing them so that the recruiter, so that the people who are out there can understand what you're capable of, I think is just as important. Like right now, the biggest worker shortage, the biggest kind of skill shortage is in the technical fields, right? It's in healthcare, drug discovery, development, patient data analytics, remote patient monitoring, all of those things. It's a huge growth field. And I'm sure we all have skill sets to help kind of satisfy those job requirements. But if you're like me, when I was in grad school, you probably don't know how to represent that. So that's one of the things that I think is very important to highlight as well, is to be able to communicate what it is that you can do, both the hard skills, right? Like I can do high throughput sequencing, but also the softer skills, managerial, logistics, managing finances, if you manage a lab budget, writing grants, editing capabilities, all of those things will count. But I'd love to know other thoughts on this as well.
Thank you, Hassan. And on that note, stay tuned to the other GSA workshops, because we talk about resumes, CVs a lot more than you think. So please stay tuned to the other workshops. So Seema, final advice from you, and then any final comment from any of you.
I so agree with Hassan. Like, that's so true about resumes. Because first, like, that's the first thing when I'm screening through candidates, that's the first thing I'm going to look at. And there are like 30, 40 coming, and you have like your other work too. So I don't spend much time, so like that's basically your first screening. You're in or out on that. So, and we are not taught, how to write a resume for like industries or how to translate our skills. Similarly, so what I did was I was reaching out to my friends who were working in like, did interviews for like consulting, and I asked them for like, how do people, write resumes? So I got some resume samples from them, and I saw that like, they are also PhDs, but the way they write it, like their skills makes such a huge difference. So, and it needs, like keep it one page. And then like I also went to other resources, which are mostly through like consulting clubs of like different universities. And they have like books around like resumes for like different job positions. So you just like get some, like, oh, I have done something similar to this, and I can write it in this way as well. So it just like what's immensely helpful. Like my resume was, I don't think, even before the internship, I was happily surprised, like how I was able to translate it to, other skills. So that's very, very important because we care so much, which rightfully, about learning skills. How can I learn about this field? How can I learn more about, you can learn and you can put those courses, but on the resume, like, how are you going to show it, as like, oh, I worked on this project or something? So I think from early on, start thinking what you are doing, how can it add that bullet? Or like if you already have enough bullets for that specific skill, maybe start doing something else which provides you another bullet, for like those sort of skills. So start thinking in terms of resume when you are building like those skills. That's very helpful. It can be even like some extracurricular, activities that also help. And like when I was looking for internships, take any internship, doesn't matter. Because what happens is when you are writing the resume and when you look at other resumes, you will learn how to translate what you did into whatever position it is. But you do need that, like, okay, you did internship at XYZ. So, and which can be like within university, it can be outside, it can be paid, unpaid, something you like, something you don't like, doesn't matter. It just like gives you some points to put on your resume. So that's my suggestion, like do an internship and focus on your resume.
Thank you, Seema. So we have actually overstepped a little on time, but on that note, on the internship, I would like to inform all the attendees here that we have an early career leadership program that if you're interested, reach out to one of us and we'll be able to tell you more about this program. But then any final comments from any of you, please? Dr. Mishra, if you have any final comments.
Yeah, I think I echo with the Seema and and Hassan's suggestions about how to build a career. Actually, I think it's what I will say in final thoughts is that follow your calling actually, and build your profile and CV accordingly actually, because if some of the companies, if you aspire for a bigger companies actually, they sometimes hire the best of the best actually, so in a field actually. So I think, like I said before, if you shape your profile in that way, I think you will have a better chance actually. And try to utilize opportunities to work in teams actually. That I think these are it doesn't matter, academia, collaborations, the teamwork always pays off actually, and that comes back to Seema's point of internship, being part of any team actually, and trying to see how these companies and teams work actually. This is an amazing skill to acquire. Doesn't matter what your focus is actually. So with that, I think and follow your dreams actually. You are given a very short time to manifest. So what I believe that dreams do not you do not choose dreams, but dreams choose you actually. So and then you have very little time to manifest them actually. So I think follow your calling, and and it'll all fall into, and I think 5 years from now you will look back and you will realize that, okay, this was a great learning experience, and glad I made that decision actually. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. I think a lot of us resonate with that. And so a final information for the attendees, today's workshop is being recorded and it will be uploaded shortly. So if anything that you missed, don't rush or don't worry about it. This workshop is being recorded, will be uploaded on the Career Dev workshop page. So finally, on behalf of the GSI's Career Dev Subcommittee, I thank all the panelists and attendees for participating in today's discussion. Also, our sponsors, US Bio, for sponsoring this workshop. And we look forward to your inputs and feedback after the workshop to help us organize more such workshops in the future. And once again, I thank you all, and I hope to see you all in the next workshop. Thank you. Thank you all the panelists and attendees.